My name is I am the program coordinator at the Civic Tech Innovation Network, and we are so happy to be able to have this session that's intended to be the last session for the year as we close out. And really, it came about from a previous financing discussion we held during the CTIF, and it seemed that there was appetite within the community and the network to really kind of get to the tangible and more useful parts of how do we go about strategizing for fundraising, resource mobilization, but specifically leveraging those underlying business models that each of the organizations have. So we're really excited to have you here. Thank you so much for being here, Lisa, and to the rest of the attendants. And we'll just hand over to you to start.
So I'm coming to you with two hats today. One of my hats is a nonprofit founder and someone working in the nonprofit sector as an NGO that needs to raise finance, but also as a donor to kind of give some guidance on what donors look for when you are applying for funding or when you're building relationships with them. So that said, let's get started. I'd like to ask you, we don't have much time today, and normally this is a full day course that can actually run even longer than that. So if you've got questions during the slides, can I ask you to note them down and or put them in the chat, and then we can rather take questions at the end so that we can get through the content, because we're trying to squeeze a full day of content into a couple of hours. So if we can just ask you to note down your questions or comments that will benefit the group, then that would be great. And we can take those a little later. So I want to just talk to you a little bit about the international trends in fundraising and how do high impact nonprofits and social businesses maintain a sustainable business model or a sustainable nonprofit model long term. So here are some of the international trends. One of the most important things is to make sure that your funding streams are diversified. So when I started working with PEPFAR in South Africa, my job was to do a risk analysis for all of the PEPFAR funded programs. And we found that many of them were 80% or more dependent on US aid or another donor or one or two donors. So we found that that model is actually highly unsustainable. And one of our jobs was to teach the nonprofits how to diversify. Just a reminder that as you come in, if you can mute your microphones, that will be great. Otherwise, we're going to hear all of the background sounds. So another international trend is to make markets work. So look at the international situation when it comes to the changing global markets for funding. Climate change funding comes and goes. LGBTIQ funding comes and goes. The flavor of the year can change, but you can maintain your vision, but also make sure you keep up with those market trends to understand who's shifting when it comes to funding that you might be able to access. And how can you pay attention to companies, government institutions, other networks and agencies that provide funding and finance for your vision and mission, and help them to do well while they're doing good with you. Another trend is to inspire ambassadors or evangelists for your cause. So creating meaningful ways for people to understand your story, for people to get in line with your vision and mission. So creating like a culture of fundraising in your organization. So oftentimes the CEO or the fundraising manager is responsible for the fundraising initiatives within the organization, but that puts a heavy load on them. So if we can encourage public office holders, volunteers, community leaders, radio stations to get out there and encourage others to support us and create those ambassadors for our cause, then it takes the weight off the one or two individuals within our organization, and it helps to create that culture of fundraising that goes beyond just a couple of staff members. So another trend is to nurture networks with other nonprofits, with entrepreneurs, with businesses, with universities, with knowledge institutions. That's very important, because the more networks you have to leverage, the more likely it is that you're going to find partners and funders to help you. So advocacy is another up and coming trend, and advocacy doesn't necessarily mean you're going out and lobbying for change at a national or legislative level. It can mean that you're influencing policy in your bylaws in your local area or in your country, but it also means just being able to tell your story. And a little bit later today, we're going to put you into breakout rooms and we're going to ask you to share an elevator pitch. So you'll have to come up with a fundraising idea or a business idea that you want funding for, and put that into an elevator pitch that you're going to give to each other in breakaway rooms. So that's also about advocacy, learning how to concisely put your story into a couple of paragraphs so that people actually give you their business card and say, let's talk, or I want to support you. So mastering the art of adaptation is another theme when it comes to survival long-term. Whether you're a small business, whether you're a social enterprise, whether you're a nonprofit, in order to survive long-term, you need to modify your tactics and your strategies so that you can stay in line with what's going on around the world. So we all know that when the COVID pandemic struck, it was extremely difficult for small businesses and nonprofits to remain afloat. So when these types of things happen, we need to be able to learn how to adapt and modify our approach in order to stay alive and also impactful and to remain relevant long-term. So another trend is sharing leadership. So one of the most common challenges in nonprofits around the world, but particularly in developing countries, is that you might find what we call founders syndrome. So the founder of the NGO, in some cases, can be a little bit of a dictator, and they can be sometimes micromanagers. They might have one or two people that they allow into leadership positions, but the nonprofits and social enterprises that survive well long term have shared leadership models with an executive team that actually the CEO and the founder listen to. So cultivating that executive board, that executive team, allowing your management to do their jobs without micromanaging them, building up that leadership structure so you can hand the leadership over to others and not micromanage in your leadership structures is actually really important, and it's a big challenge globally. So sustaining impact is another trend. Stick to your core vision and mission, even if you're involved, for example, with climate change and the climate change agenda globally changes or the funding reduces. Stick to your vision and mission, but find ways to adapt. And sometimes we have to look also at, our staff, our team. Are they performing? Are we building capacity within them? Are we keeping on people that are underperforming? How are we managing our volunteers? All of those things are very important when it comes to sustaining impact. So again, I just want to ask you, just take down questions and note your questions as we go along. We've got a very short time together today. So let's take those questions at the end. So many of you will understand these topics. I had a look at the Excel sheet, and I had a look at all of your backgrounds and where you're coming from. And my guess is that most of you understand these different types of mobilizing resources. So mobilizing resources is not just about writing a proposal and getting funding based on a proposal that we write. We can reduce our line item expenditures in our budget through in-kind donations, private partnerships. So for example, if you are in education, you could partner with a publisher. We partnered with a publisher as an education NGO, and the publisher gave us free office space. They gave us access to their financial management team, their HR team. They did all of our printing for us. So we had a private partnership that reduced our line item expenditures in rent and printing and many other things because of that private partnership. So think strategically about private partnerships and how you can leverage those to reduce your fundraising needs. Utilize volunteers. Many of you are, I'm sure, utilizing volunteers. So volunteers from universities, volunteers from knowledge institutions, international volunteers, local volunteers, so that we can reduce our workload, add extra benefits, but also the management of volunteers can be a little bit tricky. So we need to put policies in place that'll help us to understand how we manage those volunteers. And then nurturing networks with other organizations, knowledge institutions, etc. So the fact that WITS is hosting this, this platform today would lead me to believe that many of you have relationships with knowledge institutions, which is fantastic. So if you were to have a partnership with WITS, for example, you might want to ask them if there are students you could partner with. So for example, master's students or PhD students who might be able to help with research in your field. They could give you statistics on the latest information regarding what sector you're in. And they could help you with, the students can help you with many other things as well. So we build partnerships with universities and other knowledge institutions, and also corporates, other nonprofit networks. So one thing donors look at is whether or not you have communities of practice with other NGOs that are working in the same sector. If you're working in the HIV sector in a regional area, and there are 15 other NGOs working in the HIV sector, donors will often want to know, what are you doing to gain information from each other and to partner with each other? So nurturing those networks and sharing information helps a lot. And then we talked in the last slide about creating a culture of fundraising. So again, instead of having the responsibility of fundraising on your CEO's shoulder or your fundraising manager's shoulder only, rather share that responsibility with the greater staff or with your community or with other ambassadors that could go out and tell your story and help you. Then in that way, you can create a fundraising culture. So we're going to talk a little bit more later about crowdfunding. I'm sure that all of you
might be interested in this.
Oh, sorry. I'm just going to put that one on mute. Sorry. Just remember to keep your speakers on mute unless you've got a question, but perhaps hold those until later. So media, social media campaigns, marketing campaigns, understanding your brand, understanding how to promote your brand, how to get your brand out through the media is very important. If you've got a Facebook page and you have 300 likes, try and boost those likes to 3,000, for example, so that you can gain more support and more followers. But that's a whole nother course and topic on its own. So creating pilots is another way of mobilizing resources. So oftentimes, if you want to start something new in a nonprofit or in a small business or a social enterprise, you can create a pilot, which is a new idea. So your pilot will be a project with a begin date, an end date, and then you would monitor and evaluate that pilot to see whether or not it could become something ongoing, an ongoing program, for example. So donors like to fund pilots, and they often like to co-create those pilots with you. So if you don't know how to get funding for a new idea in your organization, you can try and create a pilot. Create easy payment mechanisms through your website, through your local payment platforms. Here in South Africa, we use PayFast. We use something called SnapScan. We use an international agency called Give and Gain. We use many different online platforms. So the easier it is for people to make payments to you, the better off you are. Have a look at your local country possibilities and those easy payment mechanisms in whatever country that you're in. If people have to wait too long to find out how to pay you, or if they have to go to the bank and make an international transfer, then you could lose them. So create those easy payment mechanisms. Legacies are another area that is actually underutilized. So legacies are where people can leave money for you in their will. They can leave a living will. They can donate money to you from their estate or from their personal wealth. So that's something to look into. Here in South Africa, animal welfare and some other animal rights organizations are very good at that. And they get quite a lot of finance through legacy donations. So it's not only the kitties and the puppies that actually can access those funds, the rest of us can too. So check that out. Capital funds. This is another great idea as well. And in fact, Sishle, I will send you a document on capital funds that you can distribute as well. Capital fund is an investment portfolio where you can put money into the investment and you only use the return on the investment for your overheads. So I was consulting to Peace Parks Foundation, which is a sister organization to the World Wildlife Fund, WWF. And we had a capital fund in place, and the return on that capital fund investment paid our entire overhead, 35 staff members at head office. So we didn't even have to fundraise for overheads because we had a capital fund in place that paid all of our consulting fees and salaries. So that's something you can fundraise for as well. You can write in 5% of your project proposals or your program proposals and ask for 5% to go toward a capital fund, for example. And then that can become part of your sustainability strategy for long-term survival. Okay, income generating activities. So depending on the laws in your country, you can set up businesses that provide finance for your nonprofit. If you are a social enterprise, you'd have to look at your local country laws and find out what the tax ramifications are for income generating activities, how much income you can earn before having to pay tax on that, what the regulations are. But income generating activities are another form of sustainability, and many of you are probably involved with those types of activities already. And then crowdfunding. We're going to spend quite a bit of time on crowdfunding a little bit later. I see that that was listed in some of your expectations in the registration platform, and hopefully most of those expectations we will actually deal with today. Okay, so again, note down your questions as we go along. So we've mentioned that fundraising is not just about proposal writing. So looking for partners and donors who have the same objectives that you have and the same vision and mission is the goal. So we don't want to look for a partner that is funding youth and sport if we are looking for finance for the frail and the elderly. So sending out proposals to 100 people or 1,000 people in a kind of cold calling way generally doesn't work. Some agencies get funding like that, but generally the best thing you can do is to do your research. So properly research the institutions that you want to approach, the donors, the corporates, the individuals, and find out where their hearts are. Find organizations that are like-minded, and don't send proposals to institutions that have not historically funded the sector that you are involved in. So people want to feel like there's part of something bigger than themselves. And if you can learn how to tell your story and inspire people, then it's much easier to succeed in fundraising. Okay, so how do you approach funders? So I'm going to now put my donor hat back on. So in the beginning, I mentioned that I worked for various donor agencies as the donor. And so I just want to encourage you, if you're sitting in an office with a donor, don't be shy. And remember that donors are people just like you. So they're in this business because they actually want to make a difference in the world. They want to have an impact. They've got a passion for social impact, environmental impact. They want to make a change. So they're in this game for the same reason you are. They want to make a difference. So as often as you can, I know in the COVID environment globally, this is a little bit more difficult, but set up appointments, even if it's on Zoom. Face-to-face appointments make such a difference, and it can exponentially increase your ability to create a partnership or to gain access to funding. So one of the best things to do is pick up the phone and call people and get to know them, get to know the PAs and the secretaries in the donor institutions, check with them on the best time to call the corporate social investment head or the person in charge of the funding that you're interested in finding out more about. Make friends with people, pick up the phone, call, make appointments. Read the newspapers. Oftentimes you'll find that there are tenders that are written up in newspapers or adverts for particular jobs that need to be done. We've gotten a lot of funding through reading the newspapers and applying for tenders. So don't forget about that possibility. Be honest in your communications with funders, and don't go into a meeting saying negative things about other NGOs or other businesses in your sector. One thing that donors do is they talk to each other. And if you are speaking negatively about a nonprofit that does something similar to you or a business that does something similar to you, then it's disrespectful to the sector. And also it could cause a donor to blacklist you. So honor all other partners, but you do want to understand your competitive edge. What sets you aside? What makes you different? Focus on that. If they ask why should they choose you over the NGO down the road that does the same thing, know your competitive edge, but don't speak negatively about other people in the sector. Be direct, know what you need before you go in the door. That said, it's generally a good idea not to bring up money immediately. Creating relational partnerships with funders is all about relationship. So go in with the idea that you're getting to know each other, research your donor or your partner before you go in, find out what they've funded before, ask them questions, get to know them. Listen to their suggestions. A lot of these people have been in the business for a long time and they've got a lot of experience that we can learn from. So know your organizational goals, know who you are, what you're meant to achieve, and also don't let excuses kill the deal. So if a donor says no, ask them why. And if they say, for example, well, our funding has actually been allocated for this year, we're not going to allocate new funding until next February, then say to them, well, you know, it seems like we've got the same vision and mission. So would it be possible for me to set up another appointment in February or March next year and we can rediscuss? Or ask them, do you know anyone else that I could approach who may have the same vision and mission as me? So don't just take no for an answer, try and find a way to follow up. Also make sure that whoever's in the meeting is senior and knows how to close a deal. So instead of leaving without anything, get a follow-up appointment. Find out a way that you can solidify a memorandum of understanding or apply for that grant through a proposal. Find somebody who can close the deal for a next step. Follow up with them, even if you've submitted a proposal after you've had a meeting. Follow up. Hi, it's Lisa. Is there anything else I can send to you? Is there anything else that you need? Just following up with you. They appreciate that. They're very busy, and it builds the relationship if you respectfully follow up. Also, foster lifelong relationships. This is very important. You might have a donor that funded you 10 years ago who will give your name, your organizational name, over to another donor and recommend you to someone else. This happens a lot. So foster those relationships long term. And then share results and information. Donors love to hear your stories. They love to feel part of what you're doing. They want to feel like they're making an impact and making a difference with you in the sector that you're working in. So invite them to AGM meetings, annual general meetings, invite them to go see your communities, invite them to go look and see what project you're working on. Send your reports in on time, send them photos, share information. They love that. Okay, some do's and don'ts in the relationships. Don't go into a meeting feeling intimidated. Understand who you are, understand that you're doing great work, that you've got a fabulous mission and vision. There's a big problem out there that you're trying to solve, and go into meetings, Zoom meetings, one-on-one meetings with an equal mindset, that you are on equal terms with them. Treat them with respect and curiosity. There's a lot that we can learn from each other, and there's a lot we can learn from donors or partners. So get to know them and try and find out what experience they have and how you could learn from them. Follow up on everything that you say you will do. This is critically important. If you've got a deadline for a report and you're late on the report, that donor might not fund you again. If you say you're going to get a proposal in by Tuesday, get the proposal in by Monday. Make sure that you follow up and you do everything that you say you will do. Meet all deadlines. You can pull together a tracker. So in most of the donor institutions I've worked with, we've got a tracker for everyone and what everyone does. And we will post it on the wall, we'll project it on the wall at our meetings, and we'll have the roles and responsibilities of everyone projected up on the wall. And then it shows transparently what was the work that was done this week or this month. What were we expected to do? Did we get it done? If not, why not? And then that helps for us to keep track of each other and to meet the deadlines. So make sure you've got some kind of a tracker in place, whether it's a tracker to follow up with donors that you've contacted or a tracker for your workload. Make sure you've got trackers in place so you can make sure to meet those deadlines. Listen to those that you're in meetings with. Learn how to communicate with people from different backgrounds. If you are from Zambia and you're communicating with somebody who's from Mexico, understand those cultural expectations, the cultural dynamics, the cultural do's and don'ts. Some donors from the Netherlands work differently from donors in America, work differently from donors in Asia. So understand the cultural dynamics. If you're working with the Germans, they expect everything to be done on time. They're very strict at timekeeping. So if you want to annoy a German, be late. So learn how to operate with those different cultural groups. Don't use flattery if you're in a meeting with someone, with a donor, because it seems manipulative. Don't go into a meeting saying that, oh, if we don't find funding now, we're going to close our doors, because then the donor will likely feel that you are not a sustainable partner. If you're dependent on their funding and only dependent on their funding, then they will think, oh, these guys don't have any other partnerships in place and we don't want them dependent on us. So don't act desperate or complain about not having money. Don't call them every day and harass them. Don't become aggressive if you don't get funding from them. Learn why you didn't get the funding if that's possible. Some of these international agencies and even national agencies have lots of different boards that they sit on for approvals, and it can take time for them to make those decisions. So if they say, for example, we will let you know by June whether or not your application was successful, and June comes and goes, do make contact with them and follow up with them and say, is there anything else that I can do for you? Is there anything else that is outstanding? I'm just touching base with you to see if you've got any feedback. It might be that they've extended their deadline, but they haven't contacted everyone to let them know. So do follow up. and just make sure that you respect them. Some tips for the conversation: ask questions to get started. I had a meeting with a big financial institution in Johannesburg a couple of years ago, and I did some research before I went into the meeting. And I found out that they were funding an education program right here in the town that I live in. So I went into that meeting asking questions about that project. And I asked if there was not some way I could partner with that project with the funding that we have for education, because we have a similar vision. And so in that way, it was building the relationships, asking questions, doing my research and finding out what it was they did and looking for shared value. So if we're looking for shared value, it gives us some also tips for the conversation. Listen, be patient, take note of what they're saying. Don't be defensive. Keep your emotions under control. Don't deny objections. Anticipate any objections that they might have, and try to find a positive way to answer those objections. Again, it's best not to talk about money right in the beginning. It's actually very good to start building relationships before you talk about finance or partnerships. Also, base your appeals on facts, on objectives, on goals, rather than on being emotional. But that doesn't mean you can't tell stories that elicit an emotional response. So it's always great to come into a meeting with a donor with some stories in your arsenal. So when I went into this investment company's office, I started by asking questions about one of the projects that they were funding to build shared value. And then I told a story. And I'll tell you the quick story just to give you an idea of how that can work. So I said to this lady, Lindsay, I know you're funding sport and education, and we are running events to raise funds for children and education. And I want to tell you a quick story. So we had our first event, and we had 1,000 people who came to our first event. Obviously, this is pre-COVID. And at our second event, there was a mom that came up to me at the end of the event. And she said, Lisa, I want to talk to you quickly. I've got a daughter who's 8 years old, and she was a bedwetter. And she wet the bed every day, and it was causing huge problems for her. It was a problem for her emotionally. She was bullied. She was made fun of. And then I brought her to your event. And she said, at the end of the event, you came up to her and you gave her a medal. And you said, my darling, you're a winner. And she said, I got an idea from that. So I took the medal home and I put the medal on her bedpost that night. And I said to her, my darling, every night before you go to sleep, you look at that medal and you tell yourself, I'm a winner. And she said to me, Lisa, you're not going to believe this, but my daughter never wet the bed again. It's been a year and she's not wet the bed once. And I just want to say thank you for telling her she's a winner. So these are the types of little stories that you can go into in your meetings with donors. Again, whether it's on Zoom or whether it's in their office, be armed with some stories that will elicit an emotional response, but don't become emotional in your conversation, if that makes sense. Be flexible and understanding. Again, if the answer is no, try and find out what the reasons were so that you can possibly change that no into a yes. Suggest a follow-up meeting. So that's part of sealing the deal, closing the deal. Don't go away empty-handed. Ask them when you can set up another meeting, when you can submit a proposal, when you can fund them back, etc. Okay, so what influences donors to give? Demonstrated financial and programmatic accountability. If you're a startup, it's much more difficult to access funding, particularly from larger donors. So if you're a startup organization, start looking for partners locally, local companies, local individuals, local networks, local people who have the same vision, mission, passion you have. Start small and then build your brand and build your name and build your financial and program accountability. If you're a larger organization, then you need to have shown that you can manage the grants and that you've got a proven track record. You need to have to be able to tell them the successes you've had in project management, in program management. You need to be able to talk about your staff and how they've been selected and their skills and their qualifications. You need to be able to talk about your objectives, what you're meaning to achieve, what you're going to achieve, how you've achieved those objectives in the past. Clear and well thought out vision and mission. Oftentimes when it comes to people coming into a meeting with a donor, if they can't clearly state who they are, what's the problem they're trying to solve, the objectives that they've got to solve those problems, and how they're going to do that over what period of time, then the donor might get lost. So again, a little bit later, we're going to do an elevator pitch with each other, and that will help us to learn how to concisely tell our story in a way that a partner will say, listen, I want to meet you again, or I want to start supporting you. So if you don't have a strategic plan, a lot of nonprofits don't, you need to understand what your 6-month goals are, your 1-year goals are, your 3-year goals are, and be able to answer for that in meetings with donors or in written proposals as well. You need to have solid accounting systems in place, solid monitoring, evaluation, and reporting systems. And if they ask you what type of monitoring, evaluation, and reporting systems you have in place, be prepared to speak about that. Doesn't have to be complicated. If you're running classes and you've got registration sheets or you've got meeting minutes, all of that forms part of your M&E systems. Again, your CVs of your staff, your skills, your qualifications, your board, you need to be able to talk about all of those things if they ask you those questions. There's also the need for transparency and the need to communicate with donors. So if you come from an organization that has struggled, for example, with transparency, when I worked with USAID, we had an organization in Cape Town that had a financial director that embezzled a couple of million rands. And the nonprofit didn't know how to deal with that. And they were afraid that if they told us about it, that we would pull the funding. So they set in motion a strategy. And the strategy was that they fired the financial director. They made her write a contract that she would pay that money back over a period of time. And if she missed 2 payments, they would take her to court and sue her. Then they came to us and they told us the story. And as USAID, we said to them, okay, we don't like what happened. We're disappointed in that, but the strategy that you've put in place is solid. And so what we'd like to do is continue to fund you, but to build capacity in your institution so that we can put checks and balances in place so that this won't happen again. So transparency is important, and communicating with your donors also incredibly important. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to pause and I want to ask you if you've got any questions on the previous slides. Okay, Juliana, have you got a question?
Hi there. Yes, I do. My question, you had mentioned having a tracking system in place. Do you recommend, having a kind of full-scale CRM? I know it probably depends on the scale of the organization, but yeah. And if you do, then do you have some suggestions for those of us working in Southern Africa on a kind of software system that we could use to track donors?
That's a great question, Juliana. So it depends on your budget, and it depends on your staff's capability of managing the system. So for example, I was working with a large nonprofit that had 1 billion rand a year turnover. So we're based in South Africa. And we spent a fortune on a CRM system that nobody used. We trained them, we sent them on workshops, we did everything we could to get buy-in from the staff. But our challenge was we had field workers in central, and we were working in central and southern Africa in transfrontier conservation areas across central and southern Africa, and they couldn't manage those systems with the internet connections they had and the problems with connectivity. So we scrapped that, and then we started using Excel. And we used a tracking system in Excel that everybody could understand. Google Docs. You can buy an expensive system, or you can use fabulous systems that are out there already. You can have somebody develop a software package for you. But then your challenge is, are your staff going to be able to understand it? Are they going to buy into it? And is it going to be easy for them to use? So Juliana, does that make sense?
Yes, that does. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's horses for courses, and it depends on what your budget is and the ability of the staff to buy into that. Patience, have you got a question?
Yes, thank you so much, Lisa. You mentioned capital fund. And I'm really interested to know, if we are to want to embark on it, where do we start as an organization?
That's a very good question. So the best place to start is with your board of directors. So have a meeting with the board and find out if that is something that your board would approve. I noticed on the Excel sheet with all of your names listed that you're coming from many different countries. So you also need to look at the legislation in your countries, the regulations, the rules regarding nonprofits and their ability to have capital investment funds. So here in South Africa, there's a large organization called Chikalulu Foundation, and they wrote a massive report on endowment and capital funds, which I'll share with Sishle, and then she can also maybe circulate that to all of you. So you've got to look at your local laws, your local regulations, go to your board, get board approval to do this. You can even get a financial institution involved, someone who understands these types of funds, get them to donate their time to you so that they can go through the options and help you to understand the options. And then you can start slowly making the investments, or even fundraise for those types of investments. In a lot of cases, the board will say, okay, it's got to be a low risk endowment or capital fund investment where we're not putting money into a Ponzi scheme or into something that is high risk that we could lose a whole year of income. So you've got to look at the risk analysis when you're investing. But a lot of nonprofits are heading in this direction because in that way, they've got a sustainability strategy longer term. So Patience, does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the digital platforms globally and the use of digital platforms and the use of things like crowdfunding. So we've got, at the moment, over 7.8 billion people on the planet. And nearly 57%, 56.4% of the global population is urban. We've got 66.6% of the global population that are unique mobile phone users. So what does that tell you? It tells you the world has gone digital, the world is on cell phones, and much of the world is on the internet. 59.5% of the global population is using the internet. So we need to start considering mobile platforms and online platforms for fundraising. We've also got 53.6% of the global population that are active social media users. So social media is an incredibly powerful platform when it comes to raising funds, raising interest, and raising awareness for our brand, for our cause, and for fundraising in general. So have a look at this. Facebook globally is still the most used social media platform. Facebook is also an incredible crowdfunding platform, and it's an amazing platform when it comes to running businesses and generating income from business activities, things like events, raffles, selling tickets to things, etc. So Facebook can be used in your nonprofit and in your small businesses to generate quite a bit of income. In fact, a lot of our income in our organization comes from Facebook. YouTube is another platform that is used globally, and YouTube is also, if you don't have a YouTube channel for your nonprofit or your small business, we really want to encourage you to have a YouTube channel, and then to load up videos regularly. Video is the most important media platform globally for fundraising, for creating awareness, for brand awareness, etc. So more and more donors want to see videos. If you're running campaigns, video clips get the most attention. So if you don't have a YouTube channel, get a YouTube channel. Facebook, as we know, owns WhatsApp now. So there are many platforms that can link these things together. So you'll see at the bottom right of your screen, Hootsuite. So many of you might know what Hootsuite is. It's a global platform for social media. You can also use Hootsuite to pull together your social media platforms. So Hootsuite can pull together YouTube and Facebook and WhatsApp through your social media profiles, Instagram, etc. And it can help you to get the message out to more people. Also, you can hook Instagram into many of the things you do. If you send emails out in email platforms like MailChimp, for example, then when you send your email out, you can select whether you want that message to go on your Facebook page, on your Instagram page, through WhatsApp, etc. So there are these platforms that can pull your social media together so that you're sending out those messages on these various platforms. TikTok is growing fast. Telegram, Snapchat, they've got different functions and different audiences. So you're not necessarily going to use Pinterest, for example, to raise funds, but you might want to use Pinterest if you've got a social enterprise and you're generating income for your nonprofit, and then you want to sell goods or services. Pinterest is a great platform for that. So the use of social media is very important. Okay, so I'm selecting South Africa just as an example. If you go into Hootsuite online on the internet, you can download the 2021 statistics for your country and your area. So I really want to encourage you to do that. It's really interesting to find out what's going on in your own country. So I want to encourage you to Google Hootsuite and download the country profile for your country. So check out South Africa. 67.6% of our population is urbanized. That's a lot of people in urban areas. We've got 100.6 million mobile connections. We've got 38.19 million internet users, so that's 64% of the population. And we've got 25 million active social media users. South Africa is a very mobile country. It's a very online country. So check out the stats from your country as well. Juliana, you got a question?
Hi there. Yeah, just a quick question. You mentioned that you get a lot of income from Facebook. Is that referring to Facebook as an organization, or individual donors who you are connected with on Facebook?
Yeah, good question. Thanks for asking that for clarity. So we don't get any money from Facebook itself. What we do is we set up events on Facebook. So say, for example, we're going to run this fundraising course, right? We create an event in the events platform in Facebook. We set the date, we set the time, we tell people where to register, we tell them what the cost is, and then we post that event on Facebook. And then what we do is we boost the event. So if you've got Facebook, then you set up a Facebook for Business account, right? So nonprofits or small businesses or social enterprises should have a Facebook business account. And then with that business account, you're able to boost your Facebook posts. So we take events and then we go into the boost platform, and then we pay Facebook a percent, a monetary amount. It's in US dollars. But it doesn't matter. You can use your African currency or your Asian currency or your Central American currency. It still works. They just bill you in US dollars, and then it comes off your account, your company account, in the currency that you're in. Then you can target the groups that you're reaching out to. So say, for example, we're teaching nonprofits. So we would send out, we would post an event on Facebook for fundraising and resource mobilization. Then Facebook allows you to select the target audience. So I would select NGOs in Africa. And then I would say, I want to reach men and women between the ages of 25 and 65 in all countries in Africa. I've got this budget. I want to boost this event for this period of time. And then Facebook will tell me how many people per day I will reach. It might be 100,000 a day. It might be 10,000 a day. You can change your geographic region, and then you can even select the hobbies, the interests, the job titles in Facebook that you're targeting to. So, on Facebook, when you've got feeds that come up, or even on Instagram, there are feeds that come up that are advertised feeds. So that's how it works with Facebook and Instagram. And now that Facebook owns WhatsApp, even WhatsApp. So you target those advertisements through Facebook, and then people come and register for your events, or they give you money through your payment platform if it's a campaign. And that's another course, Juliana, all in itself. That would take a whole day to go over all of the complexities of that. But you can generate a lot of income through Facebook and through social media. Does that answer your question? Sort of, I hope.
Yes, thank you. When are you running the course on on Facebook?
So if I'll just chat with Sishle and see if I can, we'll find a way to see if we can get that information to you. You can also check out our website, and all of our courses are listed on our website. And then we do lots of specialized courses for people as well. So just chat with us, and we do this stuff all the time. Okay, thanks for the questions. So let's have a look at device ownership. Now, we're still in South Africa. Again, I want to encourage you to download the Hootsuite stats for your country so that you can get an idea of what's going on with digital in your country. So there are 98.2%, there is 98.2% of the population in our country, South Africa, that are on mobile phones. 98% of our country have smartphones. We've got 85.4% that are on desktops or computers, 43.2% on tablets. So you get the picture here. A lot of the population globally and a lot of the population in Africa have access to phones, particularly mobile phones. And so Juliana was talking about, how do you advertise on Facebook? So most of you, if you're on Instagram or Facebook or WhatsApp on your cell phones, on your mobile devices, you'll see those advertising feeds coming through. And that's exactly how these people are getting to you. They target groups. If you are someone who loves animals, then you might find little animal feeds coming up on your Facebook platform often. And that's because they see that you like animals. And so it sounds maybe a little bit scary at the same time, but they use your data to look for what you like, and then they target the ads. You don't have, you can say, I don't want to see this ad. It's the same in Google. You can say, I don't want to see this ad. But at the same time, that's how people are advertising these days, because the world has gone digital. Okay, so still in South Africa, this is a shocking statistic. We've got 10 hours a day on average that South Africans spend on the internet. So South Africans are one of the most, or they are the most internet savvy country in Africa. And they spend a lot of time working, researching, and doing other things non-work related on the internet. On average, they spend about 4 hours a day in watching television or broadcast or streaming, 3 hours and a half on social media, an hour and a half spending press media, online, physical print, etc. So again, you can see the world is going digital. So digital fundraising platforms are really important. It's really important for us to learn more about how to digitize our funding and our fundraising. So are there any more questions about the different social media platforms? Again, that's a whole day course. Or are there is there anything that you want to add? Tell us a little bit about social media platforms that you guys have used that have raised funds for you. Let's hand it over to you and hear some of your stories. How many of you have a Facebook page for your organization? Patience, let's hear from you.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Lisa. We do have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I think if I'm not mistaken, we have over 80,000 followers on Facebook.
Wow.
And over 77,000 followers on Twitter. But we haven't really been successful in raising funds using the platforms. I don't know, maybe we're doing something terribly wrong. We're not really doing it the right way. But what has been successful, I think, on Facebook, we have run lead generation campaigns where we ask people to subscribe to our newsletters, and then we get a lot of responses, positive responses, when we send out emailers for fundraising.
So Patience, do you generate quite a bit of funding through email campaigns and through your newsletters?
Yes.
Ah, okay. So tell us how you do that. How do you construct those email campaigns, just so everyone can learn from you?
Okay, so we have been using them mostly for crowdfunding campaigns. So the ones that have worked is your 947, right, Joburg kind of cycling challenges, and your 702 walk the talk events, basically. So what we do is we give it more like a time period of saying, okay, we only have 4 weeks. Yeah, 4 weeks to raise 100,000, for instance. So we send out the first emailer that says, well, we have partnered, for instance, in this one that passed the 947 cycle challenge, we partnered with a cycling club called Ehulem Cycling Club. So there were 20 riders that we managed to mobilize. So the first emailer spoke to how our partnership with Ehulem has solidified from the previous sessions that we had with them. And then we were telling our newsletter readers that we are actually fundraising for our new policing tool called VESA. And we explained the features of the tool, of the online tool, and how it actually helps in the fight against corruption and And then the second emailer spoke about how much we raised from the previous emailer. And then the third one also said, yeah, something like that. But we got a lot of people donating to us offline and not using, we're using the Give and Gain link. Yeah, so.
Sure, that's fabulous. So patients, do you link those newsletters and email campaigns through Facebook and Twitter and Instagram? Do you post all of that stuff on your social media platforms while you're campaigning via email and newsletters?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so think about boosting those posts and targeting new, because you've got a fabulous opportunity. If you've got 80,000 followers on Facebook and 70,000 on Twitter, that's a fantastic opportunity to take advantage of. Can anybody else tell us a story about how you have raised funds using social media?
Hi, this is Teddy speaking. We are using social media. So we do, as you mentioned, we do have a nonprofit page on Facebook. We've also linked that to Instagram. So whatever you post on Instagram will automatically appear on Facebook. And the journey now, it's much more of learning on how to convert all the interest, all of the followers into fundraising. And we've been doing this under a year. So we pretty much, when we saw this webinar that you are providing, we're very keen to learn the trades and just to learn the know-how on how do we, I think you've mentioned key things of partnering up with similar nonprofits, which are in similar verticals. And at the moment, it's much more of learning how do we convert the followers we have into actual, raising funding. So it's a learning journey that we're at, and you've provided very useful feedback.
Fabulous, Teddy. That's great. So you're making use of Facebook and Instagram. So you can hear that he's linked those two together. So you can also link WhatsApp into that now as well, because again, Facebook owns WhatsApp. So anyone else with examples on social media campaigns?
Hi. So it's Anli speaking. So we also have got quite a large following. We've got 95,000 on Facebook and close to 75,000 on Twitter. And then we also, I'm from a fact-checking organization called Africa Check. So we mostly use it to distribute content. And I think for us, the difficulty has been to switch from just using it to stream content, but to also use it for fundraising without losing our followers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then, just see, I'm getting some feedback. I think that something else to consider is that if you're boosting, what happens is you're reaching a different target audience. So the boosting goes out to a new audience that you create, a new target audience, and that can also help you to increase your Facebook following. But it also targets people who might be specifically interested in funding you or specifically interested in a particular campaign. Like Patience was talking about the 20 cyclists that they mobilized. So you might find that you can start a specific campaign for a specific event or topic, and then the target audience is quite different from your normal Facebook audience, which might be helpful in your case, Anli. Okay, let's talk a little bit about crowdfunding. A couple of you are using crowdfunding already through social media. So crowdfunding is really picking up globally. So you can see on the screen, World Bank estimates that the value of crowdfunding is going to breach, actually, I see the number is missing there, $3 billion by 2025. And it's going to reach $2.5 billion estimated in Africa by 2025. Sorry, the $3 billion is supposed to be in there globally. So in Africa, South Africa dominates the African crowdfunding industry. And there are many, many, many platforms available globally. So African crowdfunding platforms include Back-A-Bunny, Candy Stick, different.org, Phoenix, For Good, Give and Gain. So one of you mentioned that you're using Give and Gain as well. Give and Gain is global. Jumpstarter, here, My School, My Village, My Planet. You've got the People's Fund, also global, Thunder Fund, Uprise Africa, et cetera, et cetera. So there are plenty of crowdfunding platforms that are available. You can run crowdfunding campaigns as an organization or as an individual, as a student, if you want funding for your university fees. If you've got an animal that's sick or a baby that's got that's hospitalized, you can use crowdfunding for many, many, many different things. And it's actually something that globally is becoming much more popular. So has anyone done crowdfunding through any of these types of platforms before that you can share with us about? I note that that was one of the things that came out in the expectations when you registered. So I'm going to correct this and add the 3 billion. I cut and paste and put global first, and I think my paste missed the 3 billion, but I'll cut and paste. I'll put that back in and then resend this to Sishle so that she can circulate. So just some stats on crowdfunding. I know this is a very text intensive slide. Sorry about that. But just to give you a kind of comparison of what's going on, crowdfunding is huge in America. So $17.2 billion are generated every year through crowdfunding in America. Fully funded crowdfunding projects have an average of about 300 funders. Check out number 3. Crowdfunding campaigns with videos generally earn a huge amount of money more than those without videos, 105% more. So video is the way to go, whether you're posting videos on Instagram, Facebook, short videos on Twitter, in your crowdfunding platforms, videos are the way to go. And you can take your mobile phone and you can make a short video clip on your mobile phone. It doesn't have to be something expensive or extremely professional to create a video to create interest for your nonprofit. So if you update your followers on crowdfunding regularly, then you're more likely to succeed. Email shares. So Anli was talking about no, it was Patience who was talking about the email campaigns and newsletters. So if you link in your emails and your newsletters to crowdfunding and convert those into your database of people to contact, etc., then those can convert into donations. And if you, in your emails, link people to your crowdfunding campaigns, those can also link to donations. So we were talking about Hootsuite and how Hootsuite is a platform that can merge your social media platforms together. So this is one of the reasons why that increases your funding amounts. 3% of Twitter shares convert to donations. So it's good in your Twitter feed to link them to your crowdfunding platforms, to link them to Facebook and your other social media platforms. 12% of Facebook shares convert to donations. That's just a normal Facebook share. But if you start linking into boosting and things like that, then those numbers go up. So check out number 9. 42% of funds are raised in the first and last 3 days of an average crowdfunding campaign. So that's amazing. So if we get the timing right, and if we're communicating and getting the message out there, then generally that's how it goes with crowdfunding. So have a look at the rest of those line items. Younger people are more likely to participate in crowdfunding. If you look at number 12, people between the ages of 24 and 35 generally participate in crowdfunding. A successful campaign takes a while to pull together. So make sure that, you've pulled it together, you've got your images, your videos, your information together before you send it out. An average crowdfunding campaign lasts 9 weeks or less. Successful campaign admin posts are an average of 4 times or more throughout their campaign. So communication is good. So I'm not going to read through the rest of those, but these are just some stats. You can go through these again when Sishle sends you the presentation, and just, make yourself aware of the different types of crowdfunding platforms that are available. Okay, so here are some of the international crowdfunding platforms: GoFundMe, Indiegogo, Kickstarter, Just Giving, Facebook, Give and Gain. You can use also for crowdfunding. So this gives you an idea of, what you can do on the different platforms. Again, you'll get this in the presentation afterwards as well. So are there any questions on the kind of crowdfunding platforms? Here are some that are rated internationally for the different types of crowdfunding. Any questions or comments based on what you have experienced yourself, or any questions about, we're going to talk a little bit more about crowdfunding before we go into breakaway rooms, but I just want to pause and see if you've got any questions or comments.
Sorry, that was my toddler who had a question, but I do have a question. Most of the stats, it looks like, are obviously from the US context, and I know that there's like a kind of culture of philanthropy and individual giving and stuff in the US. My experience is that it doesn't, the same kind of thing doesn't really exist in Southern Africa. So my question is, are there stats, similar stats around organizations that have actually been successful in this, and how much have they been able to raise for the Southern African context specifically?
Yeah, so the only research study I've found, Juliana, is from World Bank. There may be other research studies available. I haven't found them yet. That doesn't mean that they don't exist. But what we've done is we've taken a few case studies to kind of illustrate the point for Southern Africa. So are there any other questions before we talk a little bit about that, about real case studies that have worked here in Southern Africa? Any other questions about crowdfunding or comments?
Maybe I would like to add a comment to have your advice. Hi, this is Julian. It's the first time I'm speaking here. So yeah, I tried to do it some years ago without success. Now I'm working on Fab Lab in Togo. We are a team of different startups from different places in the world. We have a Togolese guy from the diaspora who's based in US, and he's also helping us to organize this fundraising. I am based in France at the moment, and we are trying to do something for different startups that are hosted in this Fab Lab in Togo, in Lomé City. So I don't know, it's not really precise. I am wondering if there is one platform that is more adapted to the needs of our case, which means fundraising for an African project into civic tech. It's mostly education based. We are providing different educational services for kids, women, unemployed people, to support them in creating their micro enterprises. Using low-tech stuff, etc. I think you got the point. So yeah, not exactly a question. It was just about to share my case.
No, it's a great point and a good question. So I just taught this course and a whole bunch of other courses in Lusaka in Zambia, and we challenged the students to come up with some crowdfunding campaigns for the Zambian context. So Juliana's point about the American context is well taken. So globally, North America is the most active when it comes to crowdfunding. However, if you notice with COVID and the lack of ability to actually get out in public and run public events, things like that, people have become a lot more digital, even in the African countries. The challenges are, if you're in a rural community where there's not a lot of internet or social or data, where data is a challenge, then how do you work around that? People are using their mobile phones. So how do you develop crowdfunding campaigns that are transferable to the mobile phone networks? So that is something that we need to do to contextualize in Africa. So in Zambia, the students, and they were all, we were teaching political leaders. So we had 35 political leaders in the classrooms. They have been running campaigns. They're doing fundraising for political campaigns, etc. So they talked about the use of mobile money applications and about using images, linking, for those of them who have little businesses, they link products and services and images through their crowdfunding campaigns as well. They link it to videos, and they link it to local platforms that are available. So they talk to the youth, they talk to their colleagues, they talk to each other, they network with each other to find out what those local platforms are. So you don't have to use American platforms to fundraise or to do crowdfunding, but you do have to learn what are the best platforms locally for you in your country context, and especially for those who are using the cell phones. How do they use their cell phones to make payments? How do they use their cell phones to communicate? So that's one of the most important things you can do, is just look at your local context and find out how to translate what you're doing into a cell applicable campaign based on the opportunities that are available locally. So are there any other questions? I know that this is a big topic and each country is different, and North America is not Malawi, that's for sure. But that doesn't mean we can't start using these platforms. Even if you're in Malawi, you can do crowdfunding in America, right? Any other questions or comments? And I'm going to give you some specific examples of crowdfunding that's worked in Africa. I'm just paying attention to the time as well. Okay, let me tell you a quick story. So I was at a fundraising dinner a couple of years ago, and there was a guy sitting across from me who had just lost his job, and he didn't know what to do with himself. And he said that, he was in his late 30s, he was having a bit of a midlife crisis, and he wanted to do something that made a difference. He didn't want to just sit in a corporate and collect a paycheck. And now that he had been retrenched, he had some time to devote to the things he loved. And he loved NGOs and charities. So I gave him a free ticket to come to our fundraising course, and then a financial management course as well. And he came to the course, and it just so happened that one of the heads of the South African BackaBuddy, which is a crowdfunding platform based in Cape Town, was in the classroom at the same time. So I introduced them to each other, and I took Andrew to meet the guys at BackaBuddy in Cape Town. So Andrew pulled together, and you don't have to do this in person, you can even do this on Zoom. Andrew said to them he wants to climb Table Mountain in Cape Town every day for a year to raise funds for charities. And in the beginning, he was thinking that he'd try and raise funds for about 50 charities. So BackaBuddy said to him, that's too much. You're going to be raising small amounts of funds for too many people, rather choose a few. So Andrew chose the Sunflower Fund, which helps children who have leukemia and cancer. Habitat for Humanity, which is global and builds houses for people who don't have finance for houses, and One Heart, which is one of our programs that works with children and literacy and education. So Andrew pulled together a campaign with Back a Buddy. And for those of you who know anything about South Africa or Cape Town or Table Mountain is huge. And climbing up and down, if you're very fit, it can take a couple of hours to climb up and a couple of hours to climb down. And Andrew undertook to do this every single day for an entire year. So nobody believed he would do it. And they didn't believe that it was possible, and nobody had ever done it. He was the first human being on the planet to do such a thing. So we pulled together a campaign with Andrew where we took our local payment structures. So if you think about where you're living and the payment structures that you've got available, we used what we've got here, SnapScan, and we used Give and Gain, which is available globally. We used Back a Buddy. People could donate through the crowdfunding platform itself here in South Africa. We made payments available through PayFast through our One Heart website. We used Quicket and CompuTicket and other platforms that people could pay straight into, and we launched our campaign. So then we contacted different payment agencies. So here in South Africa, Quicket is an event organizer, and it's an event platform. CompuTicket is another one. So you can lodge your event through Quicket. It can be any kind of event. And then they start sending out to their networks. And then Andrew sent it out to his networks, and we sent it out to our network. So we used this for the climbing of Table Mountain event. And then Andrew pulled together an online event after COVID where people were locked up in their houses and they were desperate to do something together. So we had an online live stream party with music and DJs who donated their time. So we had 24 hours of DJs donating their playlists and their time for all of us to get together and dance in our gardens, in our yards, in our houses. So we would all play the music the DJs were streaming. All of us bought a ticket through Quicket, and then that money went to One Heart for Kids. So that was a crowdfunding campaign that was very successful. The Table Mountain campaign generated millions of rands for the charities listed on the right. But not only through Andrew climbing the mountain every day, it was also the awareness through the crowdfunding campaign that generated a lot of interest. So South African Airways got a hold of this story. And if you fly on the airlines, oftentimes they have those ads coming up on the screen. And Andrew was one of the ads that came up on the screen on South African Airways. And there was a lady from China who saw this ad. She had a fashion agency. She had TV programs. She was very well known in China. And she saw this little advert on South African Airways. And then she called Andrew and she said, I'd like to give some money to One Heart for Kids. So Andrew gave her the details, and then he forgot about it because a lot of people say they want to donate, but then he never knows if they're going to or not. Then I got a call from our bank saying that somebody wanted to donate $35,000 from China to One Heart for Kids. Am I expecting that money? I said, no, I don't know where that's coming from. So then I thought, maybe I should contact Andrew. It turns out through one video and one telephone conversation, she made the commitment and stuck to it. And out of the blue, $35,000 was dumped into our account. There were many other donors that worked like that because of this one crowdfunding campaign. So the advertising value that we got out of this campaign was worth millions. And then the donations kept coming in after that. So we had our Quicket party, our online party that was also a crowdfunding campaign. And then because of these crowdfunding campaigns, the biggest insurance company in South Africa, Discovery, found out about us. and they asked us for a Zoom call. So we got onto a Zoom meeting. We were in COVID. We couldn't meet face to face. We had the biggest corporate social investment heads of Discovery Vitality on a Zoom with us. And Discovery then, after that one meeting, signed a contract with us saying that they were going to run a campaign for One Heart, and they were going to raise funds for our NGO because of what they'd seen in the crowdfunding platforms. So there are successful crowdfunding campaigns running in Africa. These examples I've given you are South Africa. And again, remember that South Africa at the moment has the biggest crowdfunding campaigns and the most successful crowdfunding campaigns on the continent. But that doesn't mean that the rest of us can't get this right and learn how to do it. The world is going digital. Africa is going digital. So there are lots of things that we can learn about crowdfunding as well. Okay, so crowdfunding, it might seem a little bit foreign to many of us, but it is something to look into. So I've put up on the screen some links. Again, you will get this presentation, and even in the PDF presentation, these hyperlinks are live. So you can go into these hyperlinks and check out these links. So there are many international links here. There are African links. There are Southern African links. And what I really want to encourage you to do is to go into these sites and get yourself onto these newsletters. So for example, toward the bottom, you've got fundsforngos.org. So if you are part of their newsletter, you're going to get emails every second day or so that tell you what tender and request for proposal opportunities there are internationally. Funds for NGOs breaks these things down sectorally. So if you're in education, you can click on the hyperlinks they send you for education. If you're working with the elderly or the environment, they send you whole lists of opportunities that are available right now. And then you'll get those every couple of days. So I just really encourage you to get onto these email lists so that you can receive that information and go into the email lists, get onto the email lists that are appropriate for you. If you're living in Malawi, you're not necessarily going to want to learn about the South African opportunities. So go into Advance Africa or Funds for NGOs, which is global. And these sites like Funds for NGOs, they work with countries all over the world. So they will post, if you're in Asia, if you're in Australia, if you're in South America, the funds will be applicable to you, and you just have to go through the email they send and find out what's available for your region. So you guys can do that when you've got time. Here are some current calls for applications globally. So you can check those out also in your own time. Some of these are South Africa based, others are global. So have a look at that when you can. One of the things that's important to remember is that your organization, your MPO, your NGO, your social enterprise will have a brand of its own, or it should have a brand of its own. And building that brand is going to take time. So building a brand is not just about a logo and an image, an identification marker. It's about your reputation, what you stand for, your heart, your vision, your mission, all of that. And it's good to start close to home. So in the communities that you're working in, build your brand there. And then make sure that whatever you do on Facebook or on your website or in your email listings, that your brand is recognizable and memorable. So you could even maybe get somebody from the outside to come help you, donate their time with your branding, and then create taglines and bylines to sum up what you do. So if you saw our with Andrew and our crowdfunding campaigns, our logo has the tagline "Run, Read, Lead." So on the right side of the screen, Sunflower Fund, tagline is hope begins with you. You can see one heart, the tagline is run, read, lead. Then when we went into COVID, we changed our tagline to feed, teach, reach, because we became an essential services provider and we started feeding people and doing counseling and psychosocial support. So we changed our tagline because of the changing times. So have materials available for any events or any place where you've got ambassadors, business cards or materials or banners, etc. We've talked a lot about how to use social media and the use of social media. So make sure your branding is consistent across social media. We've talked about how popular Facebook is. We've talked about Hootsuite and how you can use that to manage all of your different social media events and campaigns. Use a lot of videos and photos. That helps to boost your brand as well. And then invite the media to any events you have, even if they're online. Get your local media organizations, local radio stations, newspapers, etc., involved to help build your brand as well. So I just want to tell you a little bit about what Sihle is going to be sending you. So she's going to be sending you a link, or maybe Melissa, who's the tech guru, will maybe be sending you links to various different opportunities. So you can see on the screen, there's a whole bunch of documents in the link that you'll get. So they're sectorally separated already, opportunities for African NGOs, opportunities for education, for the elderly, for the environment, German donors, French donors, etc. So you can just kind of wade through all of this stuff that is sent through. And then also dig into those websites as well, and anything that you glean from the materials that Melissa and Sihle are going to send you that you can see on the screen. And then we'll also send you this PowerPoint presentation as well, so that you can have those additional resources. So are there any questions before we close off? And I know we're all very busy. Any final questions or comments?
I just want to, it's just a comment. Thank you so much. This has been most helpful and very pragmatic and practical. So truly appreciate you imparting your knowledge to us. And please do keep us updated of any future workshops that you may have. Or me, I can't speak for the group, me. Keep me updated.
Certainly, will do. Any other comments? Any takeaways from today? Sarah, I see your hand up.
I would like to echo the same sentiments raised by Emily. Keep us informed and definitely share the presentations. We will use them and add them into our profiles, because this is really something you don't get at university. These are some of the skills that are needed today to sustain one. And quite often they are done outside of the mainstream. And it's those initiatives that empowers people. Those that are done out of the mainstream, those are the more powerful and transformative. This is what I've found through my life as a development practitioner. Thanks.
Oh, Sarah, that is such good feedback. You know, the reason we started this NGO is because we did a research study of the nonprofit sector in Africa. And we looked at the capacity of the nonprofit sector, and we actually investigated whether universities were pulling courses together that were specifically engaging nonprofits. And we found that there were very few capacity building programs that focused on the nonprofit sector. And that's exactly why we started this NGO, because we can see the value that you guys are adding and the incredible importance of your work. And we wanted to come alongside and do whatever we could to, to help build capacity. So that's great feedback, Sarah. Thanks for that.
I just wanted to thank each and every single person that attended, participated, the feedback, and just the excitement that you brought, despite it being at the end of the year. I know that everyone is stretched in so many ways, and so it's great that we could still be able to hold this space. I told you that we were in the capable hands of Lisa, and I think the proof is in the pudding, Lisa. It was truly amazing. Every single person has only had amazing things to say, and that really just, I think, speaks to the importance of having sessions like this. I know, I can't remember who it was who said that maybe they should have gone for a beginner class and not a master class, but really it's about starting somewhere, and hopefully we can have more sessions like this if there's more appetite in the community for us to come together and have master classes that are focused around resource mobilization, but more about the practical strategies and the how-to, as someone I think mentioned. You know, it's like we can read about it, but if you've been and you've walked that path, it's always so great to have someone share that experience and impart that knowledge. So a very big thank you from the CTIN team. I also want to thank Melissa and Nati. Nati isn't here, but the CTIN team who made all of this possible behind the scenes, really, really amazing. And I think that's it from our side.